It was a typical Tuesday morning, the kind where everything felt routine and predictable. I had just finished my first cup of coffee and was about to head out to the dental clinic when I noticed a small package on the doorstep. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, no return address, just my name scrawled across the top in a hurried hand. The air felt suddenly tense, a chill creeping up my spine as I picked it up. "Hey, Lewis," I called out, trying to mask the unease in my voice. "Did you order something weird?" Lewis, my husband, appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He gave me a quizzical look, shaking his head. "Not that I remember. What is it?" I shrugged, tearing at the paper. Inside was a broken baby doll, its limbs twisted grotesquely, and a note that made my heart drop. "You'll never be a real mother." For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the note, my mind racing. It felt like a punch to the gut, a cruel reminder of the pressures that had been quietly building in our lives. Pressures from Elaine, my mother-in-law, who never missed a chance to remind me that time was ticking. "Callie, what is it?" Lewis asked, his voice laced with concern as he stepped closer. I handed him the note without a word. His eyes widened, and I saw a mix of confusion and anger cross his face. Who would do this? I shook my head, trying to push back the rising tide of emotions. "I have no idea," I lied, though a part of me had a sinking suspicion. Elaine had been relentless lately, her subtle digs and not-so-subtle hints that it was time for grandchildren. She had always been traditional, the kind of woman who believed in family above all else, even if it meant bulldozing over other people's boundaries. But this was a new low. "Maybe it's just some sick joke," Lewis suggested, though his tone lacked conviction. "We should call the police." I could see he was torn, wanting to protect me, but also not wanting to believe his mother could be involved in something so malicious. I wanted to believe that too, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. "Let's not jump to conclusions," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "I'll just throw it away. It's probably nothing." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced either. We both knew this wasn't just nothing. It was a threat, a reminder of the battle I was fighting, both with Elaine and within myself. Later that day, as I worked on a patient, my mind kept drifting back to the package. I tried to focus on the rhythmic scraping of the dental tools, the familiar routine that usually grounded me. But today it was just noise, a backdrop to the chaos swirling in my head. During lunch, I sat alone in the break room, picking at my salad. My phone buzzed with a text from Lewis. "We need to talk tonight." Simple, but it carried the weight of unspoken worries. I couldn't help but think back to the last family dinner. Elaine's pointed questions about when we were planning to settle down. Each question felt like a jab, a reminder that in her eyes, my career was just a placeholder until real life began. As the day wore on, I tried to shake off the feeling that something had shifted. The package was a catalyst, pushing me to confront the uncomfortable truth that Elaine's expectations were suffocating me. And the worst part, I wasn't sure if Lewis was ready to stand up to her, or if he even wanted to. When I got home, Lewis was waiting, the package gone but its presence still looming over us. "We need to figure this out, Callie," he said, his voice steady but his eyes full of uncertainty. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision we had to make. "Yeah, we do." As we sat down to talk, I realized this was just the beginning. The package was more than just a cruel joke. It was a sign that things were about to get a lot more complicated. And as much as I wanted to run from it, I knew there was no escaping the storm that was coming. I just hoped we were strong enough to weather it together. That weekend, we found ourselves at Elaine's house for another one of her infamous family dinners. The air was thick with the smell of roasted chicken and something else, tension. I could feel it prickling at my skin as soon as we stepped through the door. Elaine greeted us with her usual smile, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that made my stomach churn. "Callie, Lewis," she chimed, pulling us into a quick embrace. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Lewis squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that we were in this together, even if it felt like we were walking into a lion's den. Dinner started off well enough, with the usual small talk and polite laughter. But it wasn't long before Elaine steered the conversation to her favorite topic, grandchildren. "You know, I ran into Mrs. Thompson the other day," Elaine began, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. "Her daughter just had twins. Can you imagine the joy?" Lewis shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and I could feel his silent plea for me to stay calm. "That's wonderful for them," I said, forcing a smile. Elaine's gaze locked onto mine, her smile never wavering. It just makes me think about how lovely it would be to have little ones running around here. I felt the words like a slap, but I held my ground. We're focusing on other things right now, Elaine. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. Of course, dear. But time waits for no one. Louis cleared his throat, trying to defuse the tension. Mom, we've talked about this. Elaine raised her hands in mock surrender. Oh, I'm just saying. You two would make such wonderful parents. The rest of the meal passed in a blur of forced conversation, my mind replaying her words over and over. Each one was like a needle, poking at the insecurities I tried so hard to bury. After dinner, as we helped clean up, Elaine cornered me in the kitchen. Callie, dear, she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. I just want what's best for you and Louis. I paused, wiping a plate dry with more force than necessary. I know you do, Elaine. She leaned in, her expression softening in a way that made me wary. I just worry sometimes, about you and your choices. There it was, the not-so-subtle dig. I met her gaze, refusing to back down. Our choices are just that, ours. Elaine's smile tightened. Of course, but I do hope you won't let your career come between you and family. I opened my mouth to respond, but Louis appeared, sensing the brewing storm. Everything okay in here? Perfect, I said, handing him the plate. Just finishing up. As we drove home, the silence between us was heavy. I could feel Louis's eyes on me, waiting for the inevitable. Callie, he began, his voice tentative. I know tonight was a lot. I nodded, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. It's always a lot with her. I'll talk to her, he promised, though we both knew it was a promise he'd made before. I don't want you to feel pressured. I sighed, feeling the weight of the evening settle over me. It's not just about pressure, Louis. It's about respect. He reached for my hand, his grip reassuring. I know, and I'm sorry. I want us to be okay. I squeezed his hand back, wishing it were that simple. Me too. The next morning, as I prepared for work, I found a message from an unknown number on my phone. Heard about the dinner. She'll never change. It was cryptic, unsettling. My thoughts immediately went to Elaine, but something told me this was different. A new player in a game I hadn't realized I was part of. I showed the message to Louis, who frowned, his mind working through the implications. Do you think it's her? I shook my head, unsure. I don't know, but it feels like someone else is involved. As I went through the motions at work, the message gnawed at me. It was a reminder that this wasn't just about family dinners and passive-aggressive comments. There was something deeper, a current of betrayal and secrets running beneath the surface. That night, I found myself on the porch, staring at the stars and wondering what was coming next. The cracks in our foundation were growing, and I wasn't sure how much longer we could hold everything together. But one thing was clear. I was done playing by Elaine's rules. It was time to find out who was really pulling the strings and why. I just hoped I was ready for what I might uncover. A few days after that unsettling message, I was at the clinic, trying to focus on work, when my phone buzzed with a text from a friend. It was a link to an online forum, one where people shared community gossip and complaints. My name was in the headline. I clicked the link, my heart pounding. The post was a long, rambling accusation about how I had supposedly mishandled a past pregnancy, leading to a miscarriage. The words were cruel, twisting the knife in a wound I had thought was long healed. The post was anonymous, but I had a sinking feeling about who was behind it. That night, I sat on the couch, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. Louis walked in, his face falling when he saw my expression. Callie, what's wrong? I handed him the phone, unable to speak. As he read, his face darkened, anger flashing in his eyes. This is insane. Who would do this? Who do you think? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sat down beside me, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. We need to talk to her. I nodded, though the thought of confronting Elaine filled me with dread. But I knew we couldn't ignore it any longer. It was time to face the storm head-on. The next day, we drove to Elaine's house. The tension in the car was palpable, each of us lost in our thoughts. When we arrived, Elaine greeted us with her usual warmth, but I could see the flicker of something else in her eyes. Come in, she said, ushering us into the living room. To what do I owe this surprise visit? Louis wasted no time, his voice firm. Mom, we need to talk about something serious. Elaine's smile faltered, but she gestured for us to sit. Of course, dear. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. There's a rumor going around about me, about a miscarriage. It's vicious and false. Elaine blinked, her expression carefully neutral. Oh, Callie, I'm so sorry to hear that. People can be so cruel. I could feel the anger rising, a hot tide threatening to spill over. Elaine, this isn't just gossip. This is personal. And it feels like it's coming from someone who knows us. Her eyes widened, the picture of innocence. Are you suggesting I had something to do with it? Louis leaned forward, his voice steady but edged with steel. Mom, we just want to get to the bottom of this. It's tearing us apart. Elaine's gaze flickered between us, a moment of hesitation before she spoke. I would never do anything to hurt you, Louis. Or you, Callie. The denial hung in the air, heavy and unconvincing. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was mounting, and my patience was wearing thin. As we left, my mind was a swirl of emotions. Elaine's words had been smooth, but there was something in the way she had avoided eye contact, the slight tremor in her voice. That left me unsettled. Later that evening, as I sat on the porch, trying to make sense of it all, Mr. Jennings, our neighbor, shuffled over. He had a knack for appearing at the most opportune times. Evening, Callie, he said, settling into the chair beside me. Heard about the trouble you're having. I nodded, grateful for his presence. It's been a rough few days. He looked thoughtful, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You know, sometimes the people we trust the most can surprise us. Not always in good ways. I glanced at him, the weight of his words sinking in. You think there's more to this? Mr. Jennings shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Just saying, keep your eyes open. You never know who might be watching your back. As he left, his words lingered, a whisper of doubt and possibility. I realized that Elaine might not be the only one with a stake in this twisted game. The unexpected twist was that I had allies I hadn't counted on, and enemies I hadn't seen coming. With this new perspective, the theme of justice and revenge took on a deeper meaning. It wasn't just about confronting Elaine anymore. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter where it led or who it implicated. I went to bed that night with a sense of determination. The path ahead was tangled with lies and betrayal, but I was ready to face it. Whatever it took, I would find the truth and reclaim my life from the shadows. The following week, life seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy, but the tension between Louis and me was palpable. We were both on edge, waiting for the next shoe to drop. It came during a quiet evening at home, when Louis received a phone call that changed everything. I watched as he answered, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief. What do you mean she's here? He asked, his voice rising. He glanced at me, eyes wide with something between panic and anger. I'll be right there. He hung up, running a hand through his hair. Callie, it's Amber. She's at Mom's house. I blinked, trying to process this new twist. Amber? What is she doing there? I don't know, he replied, grabbing his keys. But we need to find out. The drive to Elaine's was silent, the air thick with unspoken questions. When we arrived, Elaine's door was ajar, and raised voices spilled out into the night. We stepped inside to find Amber standing in the living room, her expression a mix of determination and frustration. Elaine sat across from her, arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. What's going on? Louis demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. Amber turned to us, relief washing over her features. I came to talk to Elaine. I thought she should know how her actions are affecting you too. Elaine's eyes flashed, but she remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Amber, you didn't have to do this, I said, touched by her unexpected support. She shook her head, her gaze steady. I couldn't just stand by. Elaine, you need to stop. This isn't fair to them. Elaine's silence was deafening, the weight of her stubbornness filling the room. But there was something else in her eyes, a flicker of vulnerability that made me pause. Mom, Louis said, stepping forward, his voice softer now. We just want to understand why. Elaine's facade cracked, her voice trembling slightly. I only wanted what's best for you, Louis. I thought maybe Amber could help you see reason. The implication hung heavy in the air, the suggestion that Louis should reconsider his choices, his marriage. It was a betrayal wrapped in concern, a twist that cut deeper than any rumor. Amber's expression hardened. Elaine, I'm engaged. I moved on, and so has Louis. You need to accept that. The room fell silent, the truth settling over us like a shroud. Elaine's meddling had reached a breaking point, and there was no turning back. I took a deep breath, the anger and hurt giving way to a newfound clarity. Elaine, we love each other. That's not going to change. But we need you to respect our choices. Elaine looked at Louis, her eyes pleading. I don't want you to make a mistake. Louis's voice was firm, but gentle. The only mistake would be losing Callie because of all this. The power dynamics shifted in that moment, the strength of our resolve standing against Elaine's fear of losing control. It was a turning point, a chance to redefine our boundaries. Amber nodded, her presence a reminder of the support we had, even from unexpected places. You too deserve to be happy. Don't let anyone take that away. As we left Elaine's house, the tension between Louis and me began to ease, replaced by a sense of solidarity. We were in this together, and we would face whatever came next as a team. In the car, Louis reached for my hand, his grip reassuring. I'm sorry for everything, Callie. I should have stood up to her sooner. I squeezed his hand, feeling a renewed sense of hope. We both could have done things differently, but we're here now, and that's what matters. The drive home felt lighter, the weight of uncertainty lifting as we embraced the path forward. The theme of revenge had transformed into one of protection, not just for ourselves, but for the life we were building together. As we pulled into our driveway, I realized that this was more than just a fight against Elaine's interference. It was a chance to redefine what family meant to us, to carve out a space where love and respect could thrive. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face it, knowing that whatever happened, we would face it together. The idea of adoption had been a lighthouse in the storm, a guiding hope that Louis and I clung to as we navigated the choppy waters of family drama. We had begun researching agencies, discussing what it would mean to bring a child into our lives on our own terms. It was a chance to redefine what family meant, away from Elaine's expectations and manipulations. But hope has a way of being tested. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting a telemarketer or a wrong number, but the voice on the other end was familiar, and not in a comforting way. Callie, it's Elaine. I tensed, bracing myself. What do you want, Elaine? She hesitated, a rare pause that usually preceded something unpleasant. I heard about the adoption plans. I just wanted to say, I don't think it's a good idea. I felt my temper flare, the frustration bubbling over. And why is that, Elaine? Her voice was cool, calculated. A child deserves a real family, not one that's incomplete. The words were a dagger, twisting in the wound. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my voice steady. A real family is built on love and commitment, not on your outdated notions. Elaine's silence was a challenge, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. Louis should reconsider, she finally said. Think about what's best for him. I hung up, my hand shaking. It was clear she wouldn't back down, not without a fight. And I was done playing by her rules. That evening, as Louis and I sat down to dinner, I recounted the conversation, my voice thick with emotion. She just won't stop, Louis. She wants to control everything. He listened, his brow furrowed in concern. We can't let her dictate our lives, Callie. We have to stand firm. I nodded, but the weight of the situation pressed heavily on me. But what if she finds a way to sabotage the adoption? What if she never accepts us? Louis reached across the table, taking my hand in his. Then we'll deal with it together. We can't let her fear control us. His words were a bomb, but the doubts lingered, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. I knew Elaine was capable of more than just words. She had already shown how far she was willing to go. The next day, as I was leaving for work, Mr. Jennings waved me over from his porch. Morning, Callie, he said, his eyes sharp and knowing. Heard you might be expanding the family. I smiled, though it felt fragile. We're considering adoption. He nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. Elaine's been talking, trying to stir the pot. I sighed, the frustration bubbling up again. I figured as much, but we're not backing down. Mr. Jennings leaned forward, his voice low. Just remember, Callie, sometimes the best revenge is living well. Don't let her steal your joy. His words stayed with me throughout the day, a reminder that Elaine's power was only as strong as we allowed it to be. But it was easier said than done when every move felt like it was being watched, judged. That evening, as I sat alone on the porch, a car pulled up. To my surprise, Amber stepped out, her expression determined. Callie, she said, sitting beside me. I heard what Elaine said. I just wanted to check on you. I smiled, grateful for her presence. Thanks, Amber. It's been challenging. She nodded, her gaze steady. Elaine's not the only one who can play the game. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Amber hesitated, then leaned closer. I might have some information that could help. Something Elaine wouldn't want getting out. It was a revelation, a twist that shifted the balance of power. I hadn't considered the possibility of having leverage against Elaine, but Amber's offer opened a door I hadn't dared to approach. As the evening wore on, we talked about possibilities, strategies, and what it would mean to take a stand. It was a turning point, a chance to reclaim control from Elaine's grasp. The theme of revenge had evolved once again, from passive endurance to active resistance. It was no longer about just surviving Elaine's interference, but about asserting our right to happiness and family on our terms. With Amber's help, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face them, armed with the knowledge that we weren't alone in this fight. Whatever happened next, we would meet it head-on together. The family gathering was set for Saturday. Elaine had insisted on hosting, as she often did, under the guise of mending fences. But I knew better. This was her stage, and she was the director, determined to control the narrative. Louis and I arrived early, the tension between us a silent undercurrent. We exchanged a glance, a mutual understanding that this could be the tipping point. We were armed with Amber's revelations, but the outcome was uncertain. Elaine welcomed us with her usual air of authority, her smile tight and her eyes appraising. "I'm glad you could make it," she said, her voice smooth but with an edge that set my nerves on edge. As the evening progressed, the room filled with family members, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. But beneath the surface, a storm brewed, waiting for the right moment to unleash. Dinner was a tense affair, conversations skirting around the elephant in the room. I could feel the weight of Elaine's gaze on me, a challenge unspoken but understood. Finally, as dessert was served, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Elaine," I began, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk about the rumors." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to us. Elaine's expression didn't falter, but I caught the flicker of something, fear perhaps, in her eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, Callie." I held her gaze, refusing to back down. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The lies about a miscarriage, the attempts to sabotage our adoption plans." A murmur rippled through the room, the tension crackling like static electricity. Louis placed a reassuring hand on my back, his support a solid presence. Elaine's mask slipped, her voice rising in defense. "I only wanted what's best for my son, for this family, and spreading lies is your idea of what's best." I countered, my anger flaring. "You can't control us, Elaine. We're not your puppets." The room was charged with a mix of shock and disbelief. Elaine's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, her grip on the family slipping. Louis stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Mom, we love you, but this has to stop. Callie and I are building a life together, and we need you to respect that." Elaine's eyes filled with tears, her vulnerability exposed for the first time. "I just wanted to protect you, Louis." "Protect me from what?" he asked gently. "From happiness?" The silence that followed was heavy, the truth settling over us all. For a moment, it seemed like we had reached a turning point. But then Elaine's sister, always the opportunist, spoke up. "Maybe Elaine's right," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe you should think twice about this adoption. It's a big step." The words were a gut punch, a reminder that Elaine wasn't alone in her campaign against us. The support I thought we had was crumbling, leaving us exposed and vulnerable. I felt the walls closing in, the weight of judgment and doubt pressing down on me. It was a moment of despair, the lowest point in this battle for autonomy and respect. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Amber standing by the door, her expression one of determination and defiance. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Callie and Louis deserve to be happy, and they deserve a family of their own," she said, her eyes locking onto Elaine's sister. "And anyone who can't see that is blind to what really matters." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the brink of hopelessness. It was a reminder that we weren't alone, that there were allies willing to stand with us against the tide. The room shifted, the balance of power tilting in our favor. Elaine's sister fell silent, her attempt to undermine us thwarted. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a sense of resolve settle over me. The path ahead was still fraught with challenges, but we had faced the storm and emerged stronger for it. The theme of revenge had transformed once more, from a desire for retribution to a quest for justice and truth. It was no longer about defeating Elaine, but about reclaiming our lives and our future. As we left Elaine's house, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that with Louis and our newfound allies, we could face whatever came next together. The family gathering had been a turning point, but the real confrontation was yet to come. A week later, Elaine called another meeting at her house, claiming she wanted to discuss the future. I knew this was it, the moment where everything would come to a head. As Louis and I arrived, the tension was palpable. The family was already gathered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Elaine stood at the center, her posture commanding, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady but lacking its usual authority. "I've called you here because there are things that need to be addressed." I exchanged a glance with Louis, his eyes reflecting my own uncertainty. We had come prepared, but the unpredictability of the situation kept us on edge. Elaine turned to us, her gaze direct and unyielding. "Callie, Louis, I've made mistakes. I see that now. But I can't just let things go without understanding why you're making such drastic decisions." The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I felt the familiar surge of frustration, but I knew this was a chance to finally lay everything bare. "Elaine," I said, stepping forward, my voice clear and unwavering. "Our decisions are our own. We want a family, but it has to be on our terms, not yours." She flinched but held her ground. "I just don't want you to regret anything. Family is everything, and I thought Amber could help you see that." Amber, who had been standing quietly to the side, stepped forward, her expression resolute. "Elaine, I can't be a part of this. Louis and Callie have made their choice, and it's time you respected that." Elaine's eyes widened, the realization dawning that her last ally was slipping away. "Amber, No," Amber interrupted, her voice firm. "I won't be used as a pawn in this. I care about both of you, but this has to stop." The room was electric with tension, the air thick with the unspoken truths that had been simmering beneath the surface. Elaine's facade was crumbling, and in that moment, I saw not just the antagonist of my story, but a woman struggling against her own insecurities and fears. Louis took my hand, his grip steadying. "Mom, we love you, but this isn't about you. It's about us and the life we're building together." Elaine's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving her eyes. "I just wanted to protect you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I stepped closer, my resolve softening. "We know, but your protection felt like control. We need to make our own mistakes, find our own way." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was a silence filled with possibility, a chance for healing and understanding. Then, unexpectedly, Mr. Jennings cleared his throat, drawing the room's attention. "Elaine, sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love. You've raised a good son. Trust him." His words cut through the tension, a reminder that love sometimes meant stepping back, allowing others to forge their own paths. Elaine nodded slowly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I see that now. I'm sorry for everything." The apology hung in the air, a tentative bridge between past grievances and future reconciliation. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. As the gathering broke up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The confrontation had been cathartic, a chance to finally face the core themes of our journey: revenge, justice, and ultimately forgiveness. Elaine approached us, her expression tentative but sincere. "I hope you can forgive me. I still have a lot to learn." Louis smiled, his arm around my waist. "We all do, Mom." As we left, hand in hand, I realized that the path ahead was still uncertain, but it was one we would navigate together, with the support of those who truly mattered. The climax had brought us face to face with the heart of our struggle, and while the road to healing would be long, it was one we were ready to embark on, together. The adoption process was a whirlwind of paperwork and anticipation, a journey that tested our patience and resolve. But finally, the day arrived when we welcomed a beautiful little girl into our lives. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I felt a surge of love and completeness that made every struggle worthwhile. Louis and I stood in our living room, surrounded by friends and family who had supported us through the storm. Amber was there, her presence a reminder of unexpected allies and the strength of friendship. Even Elaine had come, standing quietly at the edge of the room, her expression a mix of pride and humility. As we celebrated, I caught Elaine's eye across the room. She approached slowly, her steps tentative. "Callie," she began, her voice soft. "Thank you for letting me be here." I nodded, the past months of tension and conflict simmering beneath the surface. "I'm glad you came." Elaine glanced at the baby in my arms, her eyes softening. "She's beautiful. You're both going to be amazing parents." There was a sincerity in her words that hadn't been there before, a vulnerability that hinted at change. I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps this could be a new beginning for all of us. Later, as the guests began to leave, Elaine lingered, her expression contemplative. "Callie, I want to give you something," she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter, the paper worn and the ink slightly smudged. I glanced at Elaine, a question in my eyes. "It's my story," she explained, her voice tinged with emotion. "I thought it might help you understand. why I was the way I was. I nodded, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Elaine. That night, after everyone had left and our daughter was asleep, Louis and I sat together, reading Elaine's letter. It was a heartfelt account of her own struggles with infertility, the pressure she had faced, and the fear of losing her family. The letter was a revelation, a glimpse into the pain and insecurity that had driven Elaine's actions. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it offered a new perspective, a chance to understand and perhaps forgive. As I folded the letter, I felt a sense of closure, a resolution to the conflict that had once seemed insurmountable. Elaine's journey was her own, but it had intersected with ours in ways that had shaped us all. In the days that followed, I returned to my dental practice, rediscovering my passion and purpose. The challenges of the past had strengthened my resolve, and I embraced my role as a mother with newfound confidence. Elaine's relationship with us remained a work in progress, but we had set boundaries, prioritizing our family's peace and happiness. It was a delicate balance, but one we were committed to maintaining. One afternoon, as I watched our daughter play in the garden, I felt a sense of contentment and gratitude. The journey had been tumultuous, but it had led us to this moment, a testament to resilience and the power of love. As Louis joined me, wrapping his arm around my shoulders, I reflected on the themes that had defined our path: revenge, justice, and ultimately, forgiveness. Our story wasn't just about overcoming adversity, but about finding strength in vulnerability and the courage to forge our own path. The resolution was not without its complexities. Elaine's letter had left lingering questions about the nature of forgiveness and the possibility of rebuilding bridges. But I realized that some answers might never be clear-cut, and that was okay. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over our home, I felt a sense of peace. Our journey was ongoing, but we faced it together, armed with the lessons of the past and the promise of the future. In the end, it wasn't just about finding justice or exacting revenge, but about healing and embracing the messy, beautiful reality of family. And in that, I found a resolution that was both satisfying and profound.